Oh, yeah.
That's us. We
And
are
here we are. No theme song still.
no.
This
Well,
show will
probably we never have one.
Too many copyright strikes.
Yeah, but we are all back in our homes. Last week we've been all in London, and I think today we want to, talk a little bit of what we've learned during the MCP Summit last week, and that happened in London. But yeah, so how is everyone back home? First,
I recently moved into this booth, but it's very affordable for Amsterdam. It's only like, 2,000 euros a month. And then I can just walk out and use the kitchen in the office.
It's a home within a home.
The home within work with. Yeah.
I think Lau had the same idea, right? You also moved into a booth.
He also moved
Great.
into the. Yeah.
These are the lock-in pods.
Sounds a lot more ominous.
No.
I'm also in a booth, but I'm at the Meantrix AI campus in Berlin. They host an event today called Coffee and Code. So they invited us to join this office to co-work from here. And it's nice because they have good coffee.
Have you had both coffee and code today?
Yes.
Wow.
And we also did like a small round of introductions, and it's super interesting. Everyone is working on sort of different projects, but all in the AI space. And it's sometimes nice because we are so much with the DevTool space to hear sometimes people working on something like medicine-wise, healthcare-wise, or like, veterinarian, like the doctors for animals. So that's kind of interesting always to hear those use cases.
Yeah, cool. Veterinarian AI stuff. I would be interested in what they're building. But that's not the topic today. We're going to talk about the MCP.
My internet.
And all right. I feel like we've got lag and we're all talking over each other.
I think it's me. I have the lag. I don't know if I can move to my mobile data.
I think we can hear you well.
Yeah, we can hear you. It's just you have a free pass to awkwardly interrupt us and talk over us. And then everyone has to understand that's just it's not your fault, it's your internet.
It's my internet, yeah. Who would have thought at the AI campus there is not good internet?
Too many tokens. Too many tokens going through those Wi-Fis.
Probably. But yeah, maybe let's start talking about the MCP Summit, and I'll let you talk first, and I will not interrupt because that's maybe nicer for you.
Yeah, I can do some general thoughts. I haven't fully structured them in my head yet. I think I was expecting something much scrappier as far as conferences go, but it was a very polished and well-run conference all around, which I think kind of reflects that like big companies are in this. they are ready to MCP. So Bloomberg had a presence, not the Bloomberg, but someone from Bloomberg. There was a lot of talk on, well, especially I think kind of this might be specific to London, but like finance companies were in the mix and looking for things that they need to be able to use MCPs more securely. I think there's, we counted 4 gateway products while we were there. All of them feeling like they come from a bit more of a traditional API gateway product background. A lot of them with cool features. Including a very good talk I enjoyed from, I'm forgetting his name now. He's from Obot. He did a lot of the auth work on their gateway, and he talked just about the pain of clients responding in there's these little pockets in the specification, whether it's the OAuth specification or the MCP auth specification, where it's not totally clear what you should do as a server or a client. And he had a lot of good lessons learned from trying to make auth work at the gateway level. So that was pretty cool. I will say the other takeaway I had is that everyone's really busy solving the traditional web dev problems around like hosting, running, aggregating, proxying MCP servers. I did not see a lot on, let's say, prompt tool optimization. Let's call it that. Which is, Lau sent in our company Slack a very good article this morning from Axiom, was it? Yeah. And that went over, and this is what I was hoping to see more of this, but I'm also encouraged that there wasn't as much, because that means there's, space to do stuff. That article recapped their efforts to format data returned by tool calls in a way that was more token efficient for the MCP client that was receiving the data. And I saw very little of that at the summit. And so I'm excited to see like kind of what we can build that addresses that. I'll stop talking for a bit. There's some other cool stuff that kind of came out just from talking to people on the ground. But I don't know, Lau, if you have your highlights.
Yeah, I mostly prioritized the hallway track at the conference.
No one knows what that is.
So mostly going around meeting people. All of the sessions are, I think, going to be posted on YouTube. So I attended a few, but I was like, okay, I'm going to catch up later. I wanted to meet some people. Some of the highlights from the sessions were there were two really good sessions, like from someone working with MCP Lite and being in touch with the spec daily. There's a lot of like head nodding that you go through in these sessions. So one of them was on async tool calls. So this is a sort of a new upcoming thing in an MCP spec in, I think, next month really, which is setting up a mechanism for clients to sort of kick off tool calls and have a way to check in with them afterwards if they're long running, so they don't sort of hold the request itself. I think someone from AWS proposed there's a SEP 1391. I now remember it because I've looked at that page for a little bit. That sort of proposes that, and that's sort of the main, I guess, candidate right now is for a model of how that's going to materialize in the MCP world. And then also on transports, there was a really good session from, I am forgetting the name, but someone from Hugging Face. They do a lot with MCP, and they talked about how a lot of the stuff in transports are, there's a lot of gotchas, and there's a lot of stuff that are handled at the transport level that have meaning at the chat. So this is the same interplay with a little bit with Brett, what you said, where it's like there's meaningful sort of consistency in, for example, in a chat session that uses tools, but that might have, for example, two different session IDs because they're not inherently tied to your chat session, for example. Like there's not a lot of sort of things right now in the spec that tell you to inherently tie your MCP session with your chat session. Those can be quite different, and they might not look like much, and maybe you're like, okay, we'll just spin up a random UID, but like the sequence of things matter for the success of a tool call. The history of the chat, of the messages matter in a tool call. So there's a lot of that like context engineering, important bits that haven't made quite well into the spec itself. Like a spec is very much right now focused around the web devy bits of just tying different things together, but there's not a lot of, there hasn't been a lot of changes in terms of like making it very specific for the let's say the success of the LLM being able to call the tools. It doesn't have a lot of opinions on that.
Yeah, also I had to hold a thought because it's still related to what you said in the beginning, because you said there was finance in London, but also they announced that they are opening an interest group on the MCP repo, so for a finance interest group. So they want to make sure that the finance industry has a say or can say certain things that are important for them that needs to be incorporated into discussions, I guess. So it's not only London. I think this is happening and also indicates that big companies are on board with the protocol. And I had a thought when you said something, Brett, but I think I missed that one. I had definitely the one about the interest group that this is happening. And well, maybe it comes back when we are talking more.
Yeah, I guess a couple of this is reaching back in our conversation. 2 clarifications. One, there's a company joke about me not understanding the term hallway track, which refers to just the track of talks that you have just mingling with people. And the first time I heard that term, I was very confused, and then everyone just makes fun of me for that now. But I don't think it's that widely known of a term. So anytime that Lau uses it, I yell, "No one knows what that means." The other term that Lau used was SEP, S-E-P, which is, I hope I get it right, Specification Enhancement Proposal.
I think so. I think that's right.
Okay. But yeah, if you see the GitHub issues on the Model Context Protocol repo, a lot of them start with SEP and then a number, and those are the proposals for changes. I feel like I had another thing to tag on there, but I forgot. Oh yeah, I guess that was another thing, was the whole interest group or working group for finance reflects the new governance structure for MCP. So you can basically form groups related to a specific domain, or I think there's one on the SDKs even. Is there? I think so.
I think so too,
yeah, you can kind of make proposals as the working group or interest group regarding SDKs. So it's a way to like bubble up, like, hey, we're the people implementing things and we need this from the spec. Yeah. I think the only other thing I would tag on here, it was interesting to hear, well, via, so from Lau talking to MCP people, the excitement around this concept of like tools as code. That's the way that at least David, MCP David, the co-creator, phrased it. But it's the concept that took the shape of Cloudflare's code mode 2 weeks ago, where they had kind of an MCP, it's basically like client and server, I guess. And what it did was aggregate all the tools coming from MCP servers into just one tool called execute code that the LLM could script against. I mean, it's a little different how they do that than what I'm describing. That's the basic mechanic is like, don't expose 50 tool definitions, expose a scripting language to call all of those. And I was a little skeptical. I thought it was very cool, but I was a little skeptical. And I was a little bit like, show me the data that this works better. And this is also via, but the big labs do see an improvement in performance when using this technique, or at least they have data internal. Yeah.
I think was actually a talk doing it, right? So I don't remember the talk, but they only had 3 tools, exactly what you described. Like, I think like the 3 steps of planning and then building and then executing the code as MCP tools. But have you been in the same talk maybe? Do you remember which talk that was? No. But it was exactly what you described, like giving an MCP server more the possibility to execute the code and building the code than having so many API calls or tools.
Yeah. So I started prototyping something that can do that locally. So you would hook up a bunch of different MCP servers and then get a single tool. There are a lot of caveats, but it's been very fun to write. I'm hoping that maybe we can talk about it next week, at least the simplest version. Yeah.
And I also found it interesting. Well, I think that was more a question on the end of the talk where someone was saying maybe we need also ways in the MCP server to know the client side of things, at least which language model is calling the MCP server, because that might lead to a lot of different results, or your MCP server might want to reply differently to different LLM models in the client, which I found super interesting as well, because as of for today, there is nothing like that, at least that I'm not aware.
Yeah, this is one of those, I think, in the bucket of what an MCP spec would help the tool use in the language models, not just in terms of the the more practical, boring bits, like that should be solved as well, but that are very directly in the success of can this LLM use the tool successfully. And I find it interesting that LLMs all have personality, so we're dealing with technology that doesn't. It's not like, whether your server is written in Go or TypeScript or whatever, it will speak the same sort of communication language, like whether it's JSON, gRPC, whatever that is. Like all of those are pretty predetermined, and now this is the land where I think it's kind of the equivalent of the web UI, which if you show a web UI that maybe has no colors or has one layout, some users will work with it better than others. Like if it's a very dense UI, maybe more professional users are going to be better at working through it. So it's sort of the similar thing where it's LLMs are the users of these tools, and they have different things that work better for some. But there's no way right now in the server you just sort of receive a request. You don't even necessarily know. You can only infer it based on what you know about the spec. You don't even necessarily know if the request to the server came from the user who's using the MCP client or the LLM who's channeling the MCP client sort of commands. And so that's one of those things that
Excursion, have you because you said LLMs have different personality, I still enjoy this article that has been out there, letting LLMs play Risk and how they would differently have strategies to conquer the world. It's super funny. I don't know if it's still accurate, but I think it was out there, and it really ties into this, okay, they might interact differently with your tools as well, depending on the personality of your LLM.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of this. I do like the personality analogy. I have been thinking of it as their this because I'm a web developer, but I just think of their browsers, and you would not return, hopefully, or let's say it would be irresponsible to return the same payload to an old Android phone as it would to a MacBook, latest of the line MacBook. You show less data on a mobile screen, you show more data on a big screen, and that's kind of I think of that as the context window a little bit too. I mean, it would be difficult to adapt for all possible models because there are far more models than browsers. But yeah, I don't know. I feel that is in the grand vision of MCP, something needs to account for that. There need to be tools to be able to adapt to those scenarios.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
MCP.
I think that was MCP in the summit in a nutshell, and I think my internet is stable. I just realized there is no well, fingers crossed. I think there's something else we could talk about because that's quite huge. It was released yesterday or 2 days ago. It's the ChatGPT apps SDK. And I had a lot of questions around that SDK today when I looked into the docs. But maybe some of you like to take it away and ask more questions in between.
I think, yes, we should couple this with talking about latest releases of MCP Lite that are also supporting this SDK. But I don't know, Lau, you've been more in the trenches than I have, so I don't know if
Sure, I can
go deep.
Yeah, I think it's so ChatGPT apps SDK. I think for the last month, you've been able to attach custom MCP servers to your ChatGPT web app. If you had to go a little bit deep in the settings and enable developer mode, but that's been up for a while. So first time that you could do from the big chat app, you could invoke your custom remote tools. And then during the OpenAI Dev Day, they launched the App SDK that effectively is built on MCP. I think the easiest way to like what is it, poorly rephrase the thing is MCP plus iframes. I love that iframes are making a comeback. I remember when I was learning web dev, they felt like magic. I think I've seen a lot of great sort of fun experiments using iframes, and it's like their time has come. I think I think it's fun to see them make them come back. The key bit that is literally an SDK, like something I think what they give as an SDK right now is this bit, which you're highlighting, which is the window.openai. So every iframe has access to a custom property structure. It's similar to what Claude used for Claude artifacts being able to access the invoking Claude inference. So it's and then also evokes I think Chrome at one point was experimenting adding like window.gemini or like window.ai, I think. So it's like a lot of this like molding of web APIs and AI things. But basically the way it works is your ChatGPT app is an MCP server, which uses tools, and then every component is effectively a resource. So a little snippet of HTML that renders a component. You effectively can render a component and sort of have it fetch the assets. It's I think a little similar to MCP UI, which we should probably dedicate a separate stream to. I think there's some bits that they're clearly inspired. So I think MCP UI was also using resources as a way to define components in MCP land. I think the key bits to sort of untangle yet, as kind of I'm exploring, is how to, because you have to tie three things together. The tool, which is something that the model invokes, that points to a resource that is tied to a component. So a resource is just a shell around your component that tells the ChatGPT app how to sort of render this bit of iframe. And then inside of there, the interactivity that you have some APIs to persist state, for example, across different iframe components rendered throughout the session of the chat, and invoke the tools from the iframe component as well. So that's kind of like making an API call, like a button that makes an additional API call or something. It's quite bare bones yet. I'm glad they launched it, and I'm glad that it's built on MCP, because there's a lot of stuff that you don't need to like sort of reinvent from scratch. Models know how to use tools. We know how to discover tools remotely. There's like MCP has gone a long way for that. There's a lot of conventions to unpack there that I'm sure will change. And the big thing I think is that this makes for the best case yet to use TypeScript to build MCP servers. I think we know from web dev that using TypeScript both in backend and in front end and sharing types and data models and all that is nice, and utility functions. And so if you can use the same language to build your sort of iframe components and then use it as well to build MCP tools, I feel like that makes for a very good experience. Thoughts?
Yep. I would say just initial thoughts are we're trying to get a working example, and it's hard to figure out why it won't work.
Yeah.
So, which is to be expected with like a new SDK and very, let's say, out of distribution method of doing web development. But I think I second the idea that TypeScript is pretty well suited to this type of, like, a small application that correlates a UI component, a server that effectively like links to that UI component, and a server that also fetches the data that feeds into that UI component. It's a much better DX to just like have the types shared and things like that, and be able to build it with the same command if you're using Vite. So yeah, I think it is like wonky enough. I'm very excited to see what. Well, first, if this takes off and becomes kind of like its own universe, and then second, what kind of tooling springs up to make this easier, because it's not. Yeah, it's just kind of weird. It's just like a strange way of developing an application. So yeah.
But also, like, yeah, I mean, just besides the development of the application, that also would assume if we have more apps on ChatGPT, the internet usage will be completely different. You would book your flight through ChatGPT then, and you would do everything just through ChatGPT. You don't need to open your browser anymore. But yeah, my confusion was basically when I opened it, I was like, okay, where is this SDK actually? Because when you start browsing through the docs, you start reading, oh, you built a server, but wait, this is like how you would normally build an MCP server. So where does it start to be the SDK? But I think you both pointed me to the right direction there, so that's good.
Yeah, so you don't npm install OpenAI apps SDK.
Exactly.
You write some code that assumes the SDK already exists in the browser. Yeah, in the runtime, which is going to be a browser. But with the native app, who knows what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. I know Lau and I have a meeting in like 2 minutes, so I hate to cut us short.
I mean, we are on time. I will press the add button. We have no jingle.